So what we've done here is a collaboration of our commercial and our residential equipment for this lab. So no matter which students they have coming in here and what they do for a living, we can take care of their needs here in this lab. So on this side, we've got our fit system, which is built for our home residential use. We've got our multi-port back here in the back, in this little walled-in area where we talk about our new tagline, perfecting the air we share. That's what we're doing going forward. You can see with the air cleaners and stuff we have in here as well. On the back wall is another single-phase system, which is our VRV Light. In this corner back here is our water-cooled unit, which is good for commercial use. And we have our brand new Inverter unit right here. This is the first, as far as I know, it's the first training lab in the country with our brand new system in it. And this one is going to be coming with a Verizon SIM card in it, so it will talk immediately to the cloud once it's installed. So it'll help their service contractors be able to build better service businesses and stuff going forward. So I invite you guys, and you'll see the multitude of fan coils we have in here. I forget how many we've got, but we've got a representation of just about every fan coil we have. So no matter what building they go into in the country, they'll have something. We have something for them in that product on that. So you guys take your time, walk around, and enjoy it. Thanks for being here.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. We are so blessed to have an opportunity to hang out with our friend Jeff Bledsoe. Jeff, how are you?
Good day. Good to be here.
Contractor Development Manager.
That's correct.
All right, for Daikin Comfort Technologies. Jeff had the... Jeff was joining us at the HVAC Excellence National HVACR Education Conference for some amazing training opportunities. And the thing that I came back with at the most was how many programs are not yet prepared for inverter technologies. Now, we had the most amazing Train the Trainer class I've ever seen. There was over 400 people sitting in on this Daikin Sky Air inverter training program. And we had other programs going on in between with inverter technology. We had Jeff doing all kinds of classes on, Daikin City, things that are happening in that front. And out of that, we had some questions with technicians and contractors coming back going, I don't know if, like one question I had in particular, I don't know if my students are ready for this technology. And it dropped me in my tracks. I was trying to be as polite as possible as a friend of mine without being disrespectful. So I simply said, your students are actually ready for that. So it kind of followed into this conversation that we're going to have today, talking about inverter technology and how long inverter technology has been around and the importance of it going forward. So let's take a look real quick about some of the history of Daikin. Jeff, tell us a little bit about your roles and responsibilities and how long you've been with Daikin.
Well, I'm in my 17th year with Daikin now. I came on board with them in 2006, the first year they incorporated here in the U.S., and we've seen the market changing so drastically over the last 16 and a half, almost 17 years I've been there. The thing that amazed me, Clifton, when I came to work for Daikin is the fact that the first time I heard of a mini split in my career was probably about 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came to work for Daikin, I realized that they built their first multi-port mini split in 1969.
Think about that.
Yeah.
1969. That's before I was
been
born.
Around the world market for a long time.
Absolutely. I mean, think about inverters in general. Daikin came to the market with inverter technology in 1984. So when should we have started training inverters in our programs? 1983. I mean, it really is when we should have begun that one. But we really haven't. Too many programs have not jumped into the inverter market. So let's talk about this from, let's say, the contractor perspective, because you bring up a really good point about the importance of training these technicians so that as they move into the contractors, they're prepared for the technology that is out there.
Yeah, the fact is that, the technicians that we're turning out of the schools right now, they need to be well versed on the new technology that's out there. Teaching them, we don't have guys graduating school working on carburetors and 72 VW bugs.
No.
There's no timing lights anymore in the automotive classes. Everybody has upgraded their equipment, whether it be automotive, the computer skills, the fact that, when they say their kids aren't ready, they're all using these cell phones. Those kids are ready for this technology. We've just got to be able to to give it to them. And the fact that when we're trying to push the contractors to embrace this technology, we need to be providing them with students and new technicians that understand it and can help them into the next 21st century with that type of technology as well. So
Yeah, I mean, just think about the tools alone. So, we have witnessed a bit of a struggle trying to get our educators to teach our traditional manifold gauges as well as digital smart diagnostic tools, right? So the first response that I had from that is why we weren't teaching those is, well, this is what I grew up on and this is what I'm comfortable with. And I get it. I came from the field. I went into teaching. I taught on the things that I was comfortable on. I had to learn the newer technologies to be able to give them back to my students. All right? It's
absolutely.
kind of part
Well,
of it.
the fact is, though, along those lines, though, Clifton, with the gauges, you need to be proficient for the older equipment. But
Yeah,
for the new equipment, it's like taking your car to the shop. You're going out there and plugging a computer into this thing and asking it what ails it.
absolutely.
When you're looking at the inverter technology and the variable refrigerant technology that's out there, it is a precise measurement of refrigerant. So the more you're putting gauges on and off of that system, the more you're hurting that system.
Absolutely.
It's
It
not
is.
the way to troubleshoot it. It's not the way to service it.
No, Mark just now was telling us that inverters in the 16-week program, they do touch on it, but need to add more. We want to hear from you. This is an interactive conversation. Let us know where you're chiming in from, and definitely let us know if you're already teaching inverters in your classroom, because a lot of our educators are going, I don't know, I just don't know if I'm quite ready for that. And we have to be, because this is the future. If we think about just like take those smart diagnostic tools, right? So everyone gets excited. Our younger technicians get excited, maybe not the older ones, but the younger ones get excited about using a digital manifold set, right? It's got all the bells and whistles. It looks very similar to the phone that they're already using. Let's think about what that digital manifold set is doing. It's using low voltage DC, typically around 5 volt DC, to be able to run 2 pressure transducers, one on the low side gauge, one on the high side gauge, and 2 temperature thermistors, low voltage DC thermistors. One clamp on the low side, one on the high side. What are we doing if we connect those on, right? We're reading superheat and subcooling, right? So we teach the fundamentals. We do it with mechanical gauges and with thermometers. We show that we do that with our digital gauges. Well, think about these inverters. These inverters are driven by pressure transducers and temperature thermistors. They're already in the equipment. So we have so much onboard diagnostic capability that we just don't have with a traditional piece of equipment. And I think that if we could teach that and take our fundamentals, teach why we're reading superheat, why we're reading subcooling, move it into this is what our tools are actually doing, move it onto the equipment that already has it on board. If you understand that entire development from mechanical to digital to implement it into the equipment, then the equipment itself is going to make more sense. Do you think?
Clifton, I think one of the problems is whether you like it or not, the equipment's here. And
Absolutely
people
it is.
who are against progress, using Jeff's metaphor, if I'm teaching an automotive program and all of a sudden I have to teach about electric vehicles, and I might say, I don't have interest in teaching that. Well, guess what? The industry's going electric either way.
Absolutely.
The point is, to me, I understand teachers are fearful because you can't teach what you don't know.
Right.
The good news is groups like Daikin are willing to educate these instructors to make it easier. And they're not asking you to replace their dealer training.
No,
They just want
absolutely.
you to build a foundation they could build upon.
Yeah.
Well, Howard, that's the one thing that's ironic to me is you hear everybody talk about I hate change. And if you sit back and you're honest with yourself, that's the only constant in your life every day is change. If
Absolutely.
you're going
it
to
is.
stay in the HVAC industry, which I advocate to kids in schools across the country, there is no recession in air conditioning. I know
No.
good and well there's not one in the state of Florida because people will miss a house payment to pay their AC bill to get it fixed. It's just not going to happen.
No.
So it's a recession-proof industry to me, but you still have to stay abreast of that technology. That being said, we still need them to be educated on the older stuff too, because when those
Good
kids
point.
come out of school, they're not going to know what they're going to run into. They can't just say, I'm only going to work on inverter-based stuff. Then, they're going to miss out on a lot of service opportunities throughout the year that could give them an opportunity to sell the inverter-based stuff to replace the antiquated stuff that's there. So it's a whole circle, a life cycle here that goes on with this equipment.
It's an evolution of education.
Absolutely.
That sounds like an interesting theme, doesn't it? I
Mhm.
might have to jot that one down for something.
Well,
Howard.
and Clifton, I think here's the things I took away at the conference.
Yeah.
People go, I'm not sure. Am I supposed to be replacing dealer training? No, just
Nope.
foundation. How much time should I have? Where should I put it in my program? I go, that's where you should be reaching out to your local wholesalers. They're going to come in. They have people who, just like yourself, you were Daikin trained,
Absolutely.
technical service advisor, and you'd come in and help that school.
Yeah. So
So
one of the comments just came in just about that from STCH HVACR. You know, where can faculty go to get training on these besides HVAC excellence? Is there anything in Texas? You know, they'd installed or had a approval to get a Daikin Amerion VRV system. Okay, now we're getting to the heart of why we're doing this together, right? So now we have a manufacturer that is stepping in to help train an industry. Think about that. We had over 400 of you, 400 of me, 400 of us sitting in a classroom learning how to work on this equipment so we can take it back to our programs to better ourselves so we can turn around and get better educated. So let's talk about some resources real quick before we go forward, because this is a great place to talk about this. All right, if we're talking about brand-specific training, let's say we're talking about Daikin, right? And we're wanting to learn more about the Daikin products so we can bring them into our classrooms. There are resources out there that you really ought to be taking a look at. So let's start at one, right? If we are a educator, we have an opportunity to acquire training that is typically utilized for more like dealer-specific training. But we need that in our own departments, right? We got to learn about this equipment. So one place I highly recommend hopping into is Daikin City, right? So for the Daikin product line, this is an opportunity to start looking seriously at the dealer style training. Now, you're probably not going to get directly in there, are we, Jeff?
No. When you get into Daikin City, that's our portal for everything Daikin. You can look up your installation operation manual, spec sheets, cut sheets and all that stuff on the equipment in Daikin City. But through Daikin City is our learning portal, our LMS system called Daikin
Right.
University.
Exactly.
And that's where the educators, and it's all free for them to sign up, for them and their students. They have free access to it. So,
all right, so let's think about that. So if we're wanting to get more resources on the training side, is this something that a educator specifically, can they reach out to anyone particularly to get connected with that resource?
me.
Okay.
I've got a PDF spreadsheet that shows them exactly how to walk through the process of accessing Daikin City into Daikin University, signing up as an educator. And the really nice thing about the way we've got it set up, when they have access to it and their students go in and get access to Daikin University and start taking classes, we can help provide them with reports so they can see which students really are wanting to learn more stuff. So,
exactly. All right, so that's opening up some resources, that you may not have just been aware of before, and that's the reason that we enjoy having these conversations with Daikin, that we enjoy bringing in the entire educational world together in one place. Now, do we have a lot of those opportunities at the HVACR Education Conference? Absolutely. Daikin's a primary sponsor of this, and we're so grateful for them. And what's going to be next year? Who knows? There's a lot more things for us to talk about.
yeah, stay tuned for next year.
Stay tuned for next year. So let's talk about our inverters. Let's go back a little bit and talk about introducing inverters into your programs. If we look at inverters as a technology, HVAC, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Howard and I were diving into, HVAC and that it is a STEM, right? If we look at what our industry does, it is a lot larger than many people realize. We're working with science on a daily basis. We talk about the transitions. I mean, if I go back just for a second and talk about R32, right? We spent a lot of time talking about R32. The first mass production plan of R32 was back in 1997 with Daikin, right? So we have a lot of transitions in our industry that are refrigerant related, and it starts in the science spectrum. We have technologies, which are exactly why we're talking about moving forward with technologies, a lot to learn there. We are also in the engineering, we're in the mathematics, and so we have the opportunity to be the example of STEM to the world. We just have to keep our education up to date. So let's talk about some of this lineage of our inverter compressors. We're not talking about them being used in a small amount of products. What all product lines have inverters moved into the Daikin realm?
Oh man, everything that's branded Daikin right now that is above 16 to 18 SEER is an inverter.
Okay.
We've put it into the equipment that when we bought Goodman Manufacturing in Houston, we started infusing inverter technology into the standard unitary systems that they were producing in Houston.
Yep.
But all of our mini splits, our VRV, and things that we've been selling since I came on board in 2006 are all inverter based.
Yep. A lot of people don't realize how many inverters are actually out there in the world, which is why it's so important for us to begin training, at least getting into the fundamentals of what inverters are.
Yeah, and our new product line we've got down there now, it's a horizontal discharge called our FIT system. It's all inverter based, and we're now manufacturing those condensers in Houston as well. We're trying to manufacture as much as we can here in the U.S. to support the market that we serve.
So that was my first trainer that was an inverter-based system. I actually had some photos in here if we needed to share them, because a lot of people ask me, if I'm teaching inverter technology, what do I recommend? Well, I can only recommend what I'm the most experienced with. So in my lab, I had a Daikin FIT, which is the 17 SEER. So I had a Daikin FIT. I had a 97% modulating gas furnace. The nice thing about using that Daikin FIT, it has an electronic expansion valve cased coil that goes along with that dual fuel setup if you're doing dual fuel. So you have the EEV and the EEV board right there, easy to see. It's a communicating system. So I had communicating 1+ thermostats, and I also used the EWC UT3000 zone control board so that I had a complete package that I could teach inverter, so I could teach modulating air conditioning, heat pump system, I can teach modulating gas, and I can teach my communicating electrical network, because we are going to see more communicating systems along with some of our inverter technology. Just kind of comes hand in hand. I know we talked to one manufacturer later last fall that was talking about the changes due to SEER 2, and they were telling us that a majority of their equipment is going to be going towards communicating. Do you see that happening in the residential Daikin equipment as well, where we're seeing more communicating equipment?
We're already doing that now with the Daikin 1 thermostats. You can communicate with those via the cloud, hook them up with the cloud. The contractors can use them for service and monitor the homeowner's equipment. The new Emirion unit that we've got coming out is going to be cloud-based with a Verizon SIM card. So everything is going to be communicating like that. So it'll help on the service end as well, because the contractors can now monitor the customers' equipment for them. So they get notified before the customer even realizes there's a problem in the building. Your service contractor already knows about it. So things are moving that way, where you can service, you can monitor, and actually troubleshoot online.
And that's the way that the world is going. A lot of people don't know that I came from the commercial side. So I started in residential and I started in refrigeration. I got into controls and automations for, commercial buildings, especially grocery stores, the refrigeration, the HVAC, the electrical. It was a part of my daily life to work with communicating variable frequency systems. So when I seen that was really starting to happen in the residential industry, man, the lights went off and went, I want a piece of that right there, because that's going to be a game changer for our industry. And it is. And so now as a training department, we have the opportunity to prepare our students for these game changing technological advances that are coming faster than anybody, I think, is really prepared for.
You think about it, though, Clifton, if you look at the fact that with the communicating systems out there, if I were a contractor, I would be doing a tremendous amount of service contracts, because with those communicating systems, you can also build in there where you're monitoring this stuff, and it gives you analytics, so you can tell when things are starting to get out of parameter.
That's right.
You can go service them before they actually break. So like in Florida, if you see something's coming into the cooling season, which is 11 months out of the year, you can go take care of it before it actually breaks and creates an issue for that homeowner or that building owner and their tenants and things like that. You can start scheduling that stuff and be proactive about your service work that you couldn't in the past. You always waited on the phone to ring.
Absolutely.
So Jeff, I want to ask you a question. I talk to teachers all day long, and the number one thing their administration says, I don't want to see these devices in the classroom. No cell phones, no tablets. Would you like to counter that, considering how do I interact with your equipment with that? It's like, please don't bring your multimeter to class anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a huge mistake. If you're really looking to get these students up to speed on the technology that's out there, Howard, I get that you don't want them talking on their cell phones or playing solitaire and all that stuff on the phone. But if you're going to get into communicating systems and being able to, like Clifton mentioned earlier, a lot of the new diagnostic tools. I mean, my son is a technician here in Orlando, and he loves the tools that are now Bluetooth enabled because he can set them up on the condenser and go inside and start finishing up ductwork and stuff like that while he's monitoring the condenser outside. He doesn't have to sit out there and wait on it on the vacuum to get all the way down, as an example.
Yeah. Everything
There's a fine
HVACR.
line there, Howard. There's a fine line. I get that they don't want them distracted with the cell phones in class, but the fact is that has now become part of our society, and they just need to figure out how to work within those parameters on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything HVACR just commented that, communicating is a much better platform and it's easier to work on once you understand it. And it truly is. There are so many diagnostic capabilities with that.
The thing about that too, though, Clifton, they need to make sure they still understand the basics of the equipment, because it's no different than using a calculator to do your math homework. If you know how to do the math, the calculator just assists you. If you know how to take, traditional tools and get your superheat and your subcooling and all that and look at your pressures and things, then you know how to troubleshoot that unit in case all of this stuff dies.
That's exactly right. Good point just came in from Robert that, phones and tablets must be allowed in the classrooms, but when they are appropriate. And so now we have to have admin and instructors, update their policies and lessons to be able to account for that. Because think about, things like, so I had the Daikin stuff, right? Also had, some of the Amana, right? All of the communicating platform from Comfort Bridge that came through, where you used a mobile app for commissioning and adjusting everything. I didn't have to take the door off from a piece of equipment on installation and commissioning. I did it from my phone. So when do you want to learn that technology? On day one of installation? No. We want to understand that technology before we get into the field. And that's what we're trying to promote, is not being afraid of the technology, getting an understanding and diving into it. Mark says we do that on week 1. Mark, thank you. That's what we're wanting to hear, because it's like this balance, or I would say imbalance in our industry. We have a significant amount of instructors that are going, we only teach the fundamentals. We don't teach the technology. And then you have the other side going, well, yeah, we get through the fundamentals so that we can get to the technology. And that's really what we're here to drive forward, that we want this technology in the programs. It adds the extra flavor that we're looking for.
You need it. And as an educator out there, I would think that you would want to promote that to anybody that would listen, because that's going to put you above some of the other programs that are out there and give you something to sell better.
Absolutely. Howard, think about this from the advisory committee. What if, as an instructor, I can now go back to my advisory committee and, oh, by the way, we're thinking about, bringing in some inverter technology and some communicating technology so that we can send you some technicians that are already prepared for that. What do you think is going to be the response of the contractor on that committee?
The problem is, and you're asking because you know the answer, what I'm going to say. I've had a number of schools that say, well, our advisory boards are not interested in this. And I say, you have the wrong members on your advisory board. So we can't, just because technology is changing, we can't ignore it.
No.
If you want people here, the people who are going to be successful are going to be the ones who educate themselves and capitalize on this, and they're going to grow their businesses. Other people are going to become obsolete. So the simple fact of the matter is, if your advisory board isn't going to the AHR Expo, isn't going to major trade shows, it's like going to the auto show. You see the new models, if they understood what you and Jeff understand, everyone would be including it in their programs.
Yep. And I think we're starting to see that. So Mark, thank you. He says, I wish our campus directors understood this stuff. Exclamation, exclamation. So this is why we're here, Mark. We are so glad to have you in our village, because this is the way that we make change happen. Let's go back and think about that for a minute, right? Exactly what Howard said. How often do we look at our advisory committee and decide if it is the people that represent where our department needs to go to begin with? Maybe we need to step back and talk to our advisory committee, see what they're truly looking for, and reach out to some of the contractors in our area that are promoting these technologies. So let's talk about that promoting of technologies real quick, Jeff. So you've seen the industry change.
Yes.
How has inverter technology changed the way contractors look at equipment? Do we see a significant uptick in inverter technology?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you, even with Daikin, my first year at Daikin, we represented here in North America 0.003% of Daikin's global number. This last year, we represent over 32% globally.
Now we're getting somewhere, aren't we? Right? And
Yep.
we talk about those primary product lines. I see that Daikin Fit, that 17 SEER inverter unit, as being a primary product here in the United States. If I'm advising someone to learn on a piece of equipment, man, that's my go-to.
Well, the thing that I knew a lot of, it's called changing the conversation. And excuse me, everybody, with being out there in Vegas last week for the conference, I came back with a scratchy throat, so excuse me. But changing the conversation, it's a circle, like you mentioned earlier, Clifton, the evolution. Yes, we need to sell product, but we need the contractors to understand that product. So when the homeowner or building owner has a problem, they know how to service it and maintain it.
Yep.
That's all about the training. So, and the nice thing there, if we get them to buy into the technology and we don't teach them how to use it, don't teach them how to service it, guess what's going to happen? That homeowner's going to get mad. You're going to get a black eye in the marketplace, and it goes the other way.
Yep.
And the nice thing now, because the technology is so new and most of the contractors out there have been taught on the old equipment, they need these kids to coming out of schools that understand the new equipment, and that can save them financially on the amount of money they have to use to train these kids coming out of school.
Absolutely.
So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned for everybody. And Daikin, we are committed to making this happen, across the country, to make sure that we put the right things in place. We have a huge sales team now across the country that are selling and promoting the product. And now we're making a huge commitment into the education industry as well to make sure that the schools that are ready and willing to do this, we want to help them elevate their students to a new level. And to me, that also gives me more bang for the buck, because I can now go out and promote to contractors. You got a ready-made guys out here that you don't have to spend a lot of money training. You just put him in a truck. He's pretty ready to go.
That's a huge point. We've already had 2 comments come in. One was my advisory board is asking for students to have electrical troubleshooting skills over other skills, from Bruce. Thanks, Bruce. And ours too, from Mark. We have to blend electrical troubleshooting plus diagnostics, then throw in the apps. So true. If we think about diagnosing any inverter system, right? So I was at TSA, so I worked for a distributor. I was a field service representative for a manufacturer, for Daikin. And if I was to go out and do troubleshooting on any inverter piece of equipment, my most valuable tool is my meter, right? Because we can troubleshoot so many things. If it's not already done for us in diagnostics, then now we can get our meter out and we can start checking for everything. Because remember, I was talking about these pressure transducers, right? DC voltage coming in, stable DC voltage coming in, and a variable DC voltage coming out. That's it. Once we teach that, we've already covered pressure transducers. Temperature thermistors, solid voltage coming in, variable voltage coming out. Once we teach how to use those meters to electrical troubleshoot, it just expands their capability. There is nothing that will ever replace electrical troubleshooting. So when we move into inverter technology, it's even more important to know how to troubleshoot electrically.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw a comment on that on here as well, Clifton. And the fact is that you're now giving them, with the technology out there with the inverter stuff, you're giving them a laptop computer with their air conditioner.
Yep.
You have to understand that stuff, because there is no discharging a start cap with a screwdriver anymore.
Absolutely.
Not in this equipment.
No, not at
I
all.
don't care who the manufacturer is. It's just not there anymore.
Exactly.
So, Clifton, if I could say real quickly, someone said, I wish my administrators understood.
Yeah.
So I'll just share this. Perception is reality. We need to create a new reality within these program advisory boards.
And it's up to us.
If you're inviting the same 3 companies all the time, that's all they're going to see.
That's
So
exactly
you should
right.
always make certain, A, your administration's been invited to the program advisory committee. B, take a look at the industry as a whole. If you're not inviting people who are doing residential, commercial, industrial, manufacturers, utilities, you're not giving them the true view of what the
Representation.
industry really is.
Yeah.
And lastly, here, take a look at this slide. What we're really looking at is one of the fastest growing segments of the industry is these inverter technologies. What's the only thing holding back their growth? A lack of trained personnel.
Yeah.
So those who capitalize on this are going to be the money makers. Those who don't are going to be obsolete.
Yeah, I was just reading a report this morning, Howard, that VRF technology is now, the U.S. is now the 4th largest place in the world because it is being adapted and accepted here rapidly every day.
You know, I always try to, compare to other industries, and we pick on the automotive industry all the time, which I love doing because you're right. We don't use timing guns anymore. We use all solid state electronic digital timing, right? Maybe some variable valve timing, but it's all done electronically. We have moved many industries. Take a look at the domestic refrigeration industry, right? So when I got started into the field, I was working on anything refrigeration. Didn't matter if it was residential, commercial, industrial, laser chill. It didn't matter because I had a great mentor that taught me that refrigeration is refrigeration, period. We just changed the controls, right? So true. So if we talk about refrigerators, we got out of the residential refrigerator industry in the early 2000s because of one big change that we were afraid of at the time, not understanding exactly what it was. Anybody know what that change was? Year 2000? Year 2000 was the first year that Samsung started using an inverter compressor in their residential refrigerators. 2000, 23 years ago. And from 2000 to 2014, they produced 36 million of those inverter compressors in just over that first decade. I don't even know what the number is now. And the reason we got out of working on that equipment is because we weren't educated on what they were. We seen them went, oh man, control boards and sensors, and oh, I can't keep my universal defrost board and my hard start kit and my universal thermostat on the van and work on these things anymore. I got to be more specific. So we got out of that market. In hindsight, we were probably the ones that should have stayed in that market because we were already working with variable frequency drives at the time. If anyone's ever heard that variable frequency drive, that's where we take a incoming AC voltage, we modulate that. Typically, we'll put it into a 3-phase DC or 3-phase AC, depending on what your starting voltage is. But we use that 3-phase voltage and we keep a relatively steady voltage. We just change the frequency. That's all we do. That's an inverter. That's a variable frequency drive. They're doing the same things. And all we have to do is be able to look at the technology and go, that's all we're doing. We're just taking in, say, in a residential application. Take that residential refrigerator. Let's come in with a single phase AC, right? Let's convert that to a 3-phase DC, actually just 3 DC lines. And then we fire them off with some switches so that we can control that speed. That's all we do with inverters. And that's what we have to do is just get to the fundamentals of, okay, what is different between a single stage or 2-stage residential PSC driven system with a contactor into what an inverter is doing. They're all doing the same things. They're just using different controls to do it. We still have a refrigeration system. We're always going to teach refrigeration. We're always going to teach electrical troubleshooting. We're just applying it slightly differently.
Absolutely. So I tell people all the time, since I came to work for Daikin and looking at the systems, I said, Daikin has not changed the physics of how an air conditioner works. They just understand how to manage it really well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it comes down to understanding how these things operate. Being very realistic, let's all be very realistic. What's happening in our industry, we're moving into inverters, right? Everyone knows that we have federal funds, particularly things through the Inflation Reduction Act, that are going to encourage people to buy higher efficient technology, right? So that is going to drive a huge demand for inverter technology. We've already seen it beginning. It's going to be here. This is going to stay here, is what's going to happen. So now we have to prepare our students to at least be introduced into what an inverter is out in the field. One of the questions or comments that just came in, but when we were doing those residential refrigerators, nobody knew how to diagnose them. Sadly, that's right. And why was that? A lack of training.
Lack of training.
That's it.
Yeah. They were scared of the change.
They were scared of the change, and there was a lack of training. So what are we doing as our village in the HVAC industry?
Well, I think this is, I like
Connecting.
Jeff's original metaphor on automobiles.
Mm-hmm.
If you work at a car dealership, you work at a Tesla or a Ford or whoever, what do you do every year?
Exactly.
You go for dealer training to learn about the next models, right?
Yep.
How many people in our industry who even went to a great school haven't been back for any training since they graduated?
Absolutely.
So
Right.
it's up to each and everyone to take the time to, you have to find the time every year to educate yourself.
Yep.
And I'll just say this, I have a lot of companies that say, well, if I train the guy, he may leave me. Well, if you don't, he might stay.
That's true.
So,
I say
there's a
that all the time,
perspective.
Howard. 'Cause if you don't train him and he stays, you're gonna stay
Then
stagnant in your market,
Stagnant, untrained.
and your customers are going to be frustrated because they're going to be wanting the new stuff because they're going to be hearing about it from their friends and neighbors, and they want all this, and you're still back in the dark ages. It's not doing us any good. I would love for the HVAC industry to get to the point the way the automobile industry is, where you're looking for basically like a ASE certified mechanic to work on your
Absolutely.
car.
Yep.
Because gone are the days of when I was a kid where they were pulling motors, well, some may still do that, pulling motors with a tree limb out in their backyard on the weekends.
Sure.
You can't do that anymore. There's engine. If you look at your car nowadays, most of us, when I open the hood of mine, if I can't see the spark plugs and stuff, and I'm not touching that, I don't know how to work on it.
Right.
I'm going to take it to a certified guy to
A
do the
specialist.
service for me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How do we get rid of the shade tree mechanics? We just put inverters in everything.
Yeah.
And then we learn how to work on them. That's how you do that.
And find the people that know how to work on them and let them become the industry experts. Trust me, they will be able to write their own ticket going forward.
Well, think about that as a program, whether I am in administration or whether I am a teacher or whether I am part of a advisory committee. What is really the goal? The goal is to prepare a technician for a rewarding career in the industry where they are providing a valuable commodity to a contractor, right? Think about if we can provide a valuable commodity. If we can provide a technician who is already introduced into inverter technology, I will tell you from the field, the most valuable technicians are the ones that install and work on inverter and communicating systems. Hands down. Typically, it ends up in the most experienced technicians just because it's a newer technology and it's expected that they would be the ones that learn it. Why would we want to do that? Why would we want to take maybe some of the oldest, more seasoned technicians and completely convert them into a new technology instead of taking the youngest technicians who already love and enjoy technology and go, by the way, let me show you something that you can have an advantage on and can make you so much more valuable.
Dude, because those older guys, Clifton, they can do the standardized stuff in their sleep
all day long.
All day long. So you teach them what, just to add on to the inverter for what they already know, it makes them real good and real dangerous in the marketplace.
Buddy.
They are worth their weight in gold.
That's how I got where I was. I wasn't afraid to try new things. And that's
Absolutely.
what we're encouraging you as an instructor to do. Don't be afraid to try new things. Did you ever install an inverter out in the field? If you've been out of the field for a few years, you probably didn't. And there was a period of time where a lot of contractors would install mini splits, but they would tell you they didn't work on them, right? They knew the best practices. They knew how to properly install things. They just didn't know how to properly service and diagnose them. So we have a lot of people that have gotten into education that are on that place where they're wonderful fundamentals. I will about guarantee everyone on this program is fantastic at teaching fundamentals, can teach a technician how they should properly work on something, but may not have been exposed to this technology when they were in the industry. And we don't want you to be afraid of this. We are here to encourage you and to provide you the resources to get to that place. And we will do this together. That's what this village is for.
Well, my question, Clifton, is so what are the action items? If I'm a teacher,
That's right.
I can't teach what I don't know.
Nope.
So how do I learn it, Mr. Bledsoe? What are some of my resources?
Well, first thing you can do is reach out to me or go to Daikin City. And if you have any issues in navigating through there, you can reach out to me directly and I can shoot you the documentation on how to navigate and get into Daikin University. And just as an example, in Daikin University, if you go in there and type in like webinars, there are like 191 free recorded webinars you can start searching through and watching at your leisure. We have a lot of on-demand online classes. We have a lot of in-person classes around the country. We've got a facility in Lynbrook, Boston, Houston, Dallas and Irvine, California, and we've got a couple in Canada as well that are company-owned training centers. So there's no reason why you can't find a class. And besides that, we have about, I think it's 78 or 80 of our industry partners with distributors and reps that have additional training centers to ours across the marketplace as well. So
That's what I used to do.
So the other things I see, so if I don't, now I know it, what are the other obstacles? Is there curriculum available? Well, we're working on that. Some people have developed it, ESCO is. But I look at the two other obstacles are, how do I get equipment and how do I get buy-in? So if you're a public school, you should be looking at using Perkins funds to acquire this equipment now, because this time of year is usually when you're filling out those requests.
And I can make sure you get a good discount on Daikin equipment if you want to go that route. So
that's great. And I think the last thing goes back to a question you asked earlier, Clifton, program advisory committees.
Absolutely.
You need to make certain you're inviting the right people who can explain where the industry's going, because it's looking at each of those obstacles and saying, here's the obstacles to me integrating this. They're all easy obstacles to overcome.
Oh, yeah.
I think back about, at the distributor level, the distributor is one of the first people to see the equipment when it actually hits the ground, right? So let's think about this sequence of education. So if you're a new instructor and you don't know how to even get into the industry to learn about how things are changing, let's kind of talk about this roadmap for a little bit. Now, this is my own perspective. It may not be the correct one, but let's just kind of talk about it and correct me if I'm wrong. For me, a great way to start this venture is the AHR conference. We get to see the equipment that is coming out. Then you head over to the HVAC Excellence National HVACR Education Conference. You as a trainer get to sit down and train the trainer with manufacturers and other industry organizations. As we start moving down that line to learn better, a great resource is your distributors, who are the first people who see the products when they actually hit the ground. So a recommendation for myself is to make sure that in your advisory committee, you have a local distributor that can talk to you about the products that are coming in and the technologies, instead of being down at the end where we're maybe a contractor and we don't see them for a little while, or maybe we're not even the right contractor working with these new technologies. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yep, it is fair to say. The fact is, I'm going to be reaching out to our division vice presidents and presidents across the country to solicit their salespeople to get more involved with our distributors and across the country as well, to volunteer to be on these program advisory committees.
Man, now we're getting somewhere.
I want them involved in it, because they don't know what the schools need if they don't go sit down and talk to them.
No, for sure. So as we're talking about going around the country and making connections, we want to know where you are from. Tons of great comments today. Let us know where you're chiming in from. I'm hanging out here just outside of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah, I'm in Orlando.
Denver.
So everyone, let us know where you're chiming in from today. All right, we've had a lot of comments. We've had a few questions. Has anyone got any questions that we'd like to discuss while we're here? You got some great connections. We'll give that a few minutes.
Clifton, while you're doing that, let me just say something. Part of why I thought it was important to join you today, I didn't have anything to add to the discussion. I don't know if you're going to be getting technical or just giving an overview. But it's really to explain what Daikin's doing. It's one thing to say you're the world's largest manufacturer of equipment. It's another thing to put your money behind educating people.
Education.
So we have this conference every year, the National HVAC Education Conference. Daikin came in as a sponsor. They've gone above and beyond. That's thanks to Mr. Bledsoe here.
Absolutely.
I just really want to thank you, Jeff, because you really do understand the teachers need the resources. We're all the benefactors or victims of the training we get. Whether we know it or not, we're all dependent upon the success of our local trade school. So the more we help them be successful, the better the products that's going to come out. And you're making a big commitment by educating people with us, and we appreciate that partnership.
Yeah, thanks for that, Howard. I am a big proponent, because I went to trade school when I was younger, so I understand what that means, and I know that I've built a pretty good career over the last 35 years in the HVAC industry, and I know how critical it is when you're looking at the change in technology. You look at a electric hot water heater. I think the biggest change in some of those is adding a insulating blanket and a timer on there is the biggest change in the technology of those things, because it's just two dead shorts in a water heater. But the HVAC and the air conditioning industry has changed so drastically. And because of my age, I use the Ferrari and the 72 VW Bug as comparisons, but that's literally what it is. There's that kind of change in the marketplace, and we've got to be able to do that. And Daikin is committed to making sure that people understand how to use this. Us selling it is only part of the solution. We've still got to be able to have contractors that can service it and maintain it in the field, or we all fall flat on our faces.
That's exactly
And
right.
if they're all running the other way, and the technology is going this way, and even the government's putting out monies for the Inflation Reduction Act and stuff to promote it, people still not going to be wanting to put it in because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
So we owe it to ourselves and to our educators and to our consumers to make sure that the training is available for them and to help them out. So I'm here for whatever's needed from me. So
Absolutely. And we see that very, very regularly. One of the comments and questions just came in, what about tools? Are there diagnostic tools? Do we need to use an oscilloscope? No, we're not diving that far. So I highly recommend you to hang out with us as we continue these conversations. We're going to be bringing in a bunch of technical training specialists to be able to talk about different things. If you're curious about the communicating side, we had John Brown from EWC Controls talking about the entire Climate Talk Network, which is a very, very common communicating platform. It's what all the Daikin equipment uses. I love it. It's super easy to diagnose. All you need is that voltmeter. Goes back to understanding basic electrical. If you can run a voltmeter, you can diagnose a communicating network. Hands down, I will guarantee you. Go back and check that out. We'll explain a lot of how easy a communicating network is to understand. When we talk about, diagnosing error codes, most of our equipment already has the error codes already in it. So if something has malfunctioned, we're going in and diving in and looking to see what that component is or what that failure. We do have some high-end diagnostic capabilities where we can, use tools to connect and use computers to do analytics. That's much more advanced. That's like the end of the road. That's when all else has failed. Now we can get someone who's very specialized. But what if I'm that first-year guy and I'm out and I'm doing a service on a piece of equipment? I've just came out of vocational school. I've got some fundamentals. I understand how communicating systems work. I might be the guy that goes out while someone's out cleaning the outdoor unit. I might be the one in the remote control going, let me run through these error codes real quick and make sure we don't have anything that's popped up in the past that I can take a look at some history while I'm here. How would you like to be that guy? What do you think he's worth as a first-year technician out in the field? Bucks, I'll tell you that.
Well, that's the thing I tell people all the time with ours, Clifton, is the fact that you go up to the unit and you ask it what ails it.
That's right.
The error codes will tell you. And the nice thing with our equipment, the error codes are pretty well universal across product lines.
Absolutely.
So a U4 on a mini split is the same thing on a VRV. It's a communication issue.
Yep.
If I can't talk to this guy. So that's where you start troubleshooting. The first thing you do when you walk up to one of our pieces of equipment is not put gauges on them.
That's exactly
I just saw someone chime in. Dan Sowers, you need to reach out to me. I may be in your neck of the woods here pretty soon.
There's a Kansas. Yep. Had people chiming in all over the place. We've got Kansas, we've got Texas, we've got Vegas, we've got Dallas, Virginia, Arkansas, Michigan. We've also got Vancouver. Thank you all for joining so much. We love having these conversations. Like we're here.
No, you can't.
We're here to prepare you.
Exactly. And I just saw a comment on here, Clifton. You can't beat a sling cyclometer, man. Those things are awesome. They're almost foolproof out in the marketplace. So
I even still have my dial-a charge sitting over here in the corner. Do I teach people how to use it? Maybe fundamentals.
If you've got your grandfather's old flaring block though that has a 38-degree curve on it, polish it up and put it on your shelf.
Pitch it.
Not any good
polish it.
Yeah, it's not any good on this type of equipment with a 45-degree flare for 410. So
I think we should do, I will add that onto my list. You all keep hanging out with us. We'll actually do a class on how to properly do flares on these equipment so they don't leak. Because that's the biggest thing. A lot of people complain, say take a ductless system, right? They're almost all connected with flare fittings. When I was out in the field, what was the primary problem with all the warranty calls that I would go on to? It wasn't the equipment. It was improper flare connections. Yeah. So when you understand the equipment, you understand that there are slight differences. Technologies are a little bit different. Maybe connections are a little bit different. Once you learn those, it's like everything. If you were into working on automobiles, if I learned how to work on a Ford, Did that mean that I only worked on a Ford? No, I just learned the difference between the Ford and the Chevy, and I could work on both of them. Pick up a Dodge, and I can work on anything. Now you become valuable, being universal.
Oh, yeah.
But since we keep going to these metaphors of cars, let me share something. Talk to a lot of people who never heard of Daikin. Who are they? I go, do you remember going to the auto show as a kid? And it was just GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Then all of a sudden, it's like, who's Toyota? Who's Honda? And it started getting bigger and bigger. Well, I encourage everyone to take a look. Daikin's the world's largest manufacturer of HVAC equipment. The picture that Clifton kind of has behind all of us is in Waller, Texas. That's one of 130 plus facilities they have around the globe. That one particular facility, around the building. So if you were to just walk out for lunch, that's 4.1 million square feet of manufacturing facilities sitting just outside of Houston. That's just one of 100 and what, Jeff, 33 facilities?
Yeah, something like that. You know, we've got now over 86,000 employees around the globe.
Wow.
We have over 14,000 to report to people in that building here in the U.S. So
that building's impressive.
Very much.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
All right, let's give it a couple minutes for any wrap-up questions. We really appreciate everyone joining in. One comment, is that first-year rookie running remote control really worth so much? He's worth a lot more than the guy outside with a garden hose, I'll tell you that, if he knows what he's doing.
Well, real quickly on that, think about the conference last week. We had these instructors in their 60s and 70s and those in their 30s and 40s. And guess what? They all had something they could learn from each other.
Absolutely.
So just as the older instructors told the newer instructors how to ease into the classroom and what works and what doesn't, a lot of those younger instructors were happy to show the older instructors how to use technology and embrace it. So
I was amazed.
If you're a contractor, you should be looking at some of these young people and say, I got a lot I could teach you, but I bet I could learn a lot from you as well.
Absolutely. Because the older guys out there, they can teach you some tricks of the trade that you will not learn in school. They teach you from those years of hard knocks out there, learning by example in the field. So you cannot replace that stuff.
How would you like to be that young technician coming out of school that knows how to connect with a mobile app to a piece of equipment, and you're riding along with an experienced guy in the van? Because a lot of times you come out of school, you're going to ride along somebody to get your field experience, and you're riding around with one of the most experienced service guys out there. You're learning a lot, and you get to that first piece of equipment, and you find out that it's having some issues, and you're that young guy, and you say, do you want me to connect on real quick to this and see if there's any diagnostic errors? And he says, how are you doing that? And then you say, you show me what you know and I'll show you what I know.
Exactly.
And now you have a real growth opportunity for everyone.
Yep.
Well, and I think the thing to me is, if you're an instructor, you should be conveying to your administration how big the industry is, how much it's changing. Jeff, you brought up change. A couple of years ago, we didn't have CRISPR technology for gene editing. We didn't have vaccines for COVID. We didn't have, heck, a dozen years ago, we didn't have these things, right?
That's true.
Look at all the technology around us. HVAC's not changing any different. The whole world's changing. So either you're going to embrace it and become very successful, or you're going to be left behind.
I agree wholeheartedly. All right, real quick, before we get out here, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about by this class that was put on at the conference, I got a real quick clip. I'm going to hop in here just so you get an idea of what 400 trainers look like sitting in a room learning from a manufacturer.
And for you guys in the back, my standard line is, this ain't church. You can sit up front. You know, I was one of them heathens also sit in the back. Guys, we are honored and humbled to have all of you here today. This is truly a pleasure to have you guys here with us today. We're glad to be here. We're glad to be associated with HVAC Excellence and ESCO, to be able to bring these training classes to you guys. One thing I'm going to ask for you guys today is that if you have some suggestions about some things you would like to see next year, please grab myself or one of my coworkers and let us know what that is. We're always trying to bring new or fresher things to you guys, and we want to make sure that it's beneficial to you and your students. Because my name is Jeff Bledsoe, and I am the Contractor Development Manager for Daikin. I cover North America, and without you guys, I won't have any potential future contractors to develop. So we need you guys. You guys are very essential to what we do in our industry. So thank you, and give yourselves a hand for being here this morning.
Have to say that was the funnest conference, and things like that class just makes it all worthwhile. Gustavo, thank you for joining us from Argentina.
I was going to say he
this.
wins the longest distance from us right now. So
That's right, but you're part of our village, my friend, and we are so thankful to have you here. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. Howard, Jeff, got anything you'd like to throw in here before we call it a day?
Thanks for everybody being here today, and also Howard, and you and your group are phenomenal. I enjoy. That's one reason why we've been hanging out together with you guys so long. Y'all just a pleasure to work with, and we all pulling that wagon in the same direction to make sure we're trying to make our industry better, and that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
And I'd like to just say that's what this is all about. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, your team at Daikin, Clifton. We're all about educating the industry. We just want, our goal is to leave it better than we found it. And I think we're doing that.
Yeah, amen. Yeah.
You know, I just realized I'm going to have to update my closing video. I think it's a couple weeks out of date. But I'm going to play it anyhow. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I'll see you all next week on Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show. Thank you for joining Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show. Brought to you by the ESCO Institute in HVAC Excellence. Our mission is to bring the top educators of the industry here for you in a live, unique experience so that you can join us from multiple social platforms, all with the opportunity to ask questions, to be involved, and to learn about the things that are changing in our industry as they are changing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notifications when we go live every week. Are you an educator looking for resources to be the best that you can be? Man, you're in the right place. And we invite you to come join us at the National HVACR Education Conference, where we bring all of these guests and many more, along with manufacturers and different organizations of the trade, so that we can all be in one place at one time and gather this information to make us better together. How do you learn more? Go to escogroup.org, select HVAC Excellence, and then the conference. I look forward to seeing you again next week on Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show.